Hello and welcome to our presentation on solar energy as an alternative to fossil fuels. This presentation will cover a brief introduction to solar, including how it works and why we use it. It will also discuss the land use requirements and CO2 emissions, and will examine the feasibility of solar in Australia. I'm Roshni Dutta, and I'm going to talk about what solar is. Large-scale solar for energy production can be split into two types. The first is known as solar photovoltaics, or SV. This involves large arrays of solar panels set out in an open space. The panels capture and convert the energy in sunlight into direct current energy. Inverters then convert this to alternating current energy and is integrated into the energy grid. The second type is concentrating solar thermal power, which involves using reflective mirrors to heat a fluid, usually water, which is then evaporated. The steam is then used to drive a turbine. This image on the right here is of the Whitsunday Fault solar farm using an SV system. So why do we want to use solar? Primarily, we are looking towards alternatives to fossil fuels for energy generation, as the global energy sector accounts for 2/3 of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. If we are to progress with the global goals of reducing emissions, this can't be done without decarbonising the energy sector. Australia's emissions target under the Paris Agreement is 26 to 28% below the 2005 emissions levels by the year 2030. If we want to achieve this modest goal, Australia will need to move away from coal towards renewable options. Solar is also becoming cheaper to produce. The lifespan of a coal-fired power plant is roughly 30 years. So as the current plants are decommissioned, it is cheaper to replace them with solar farms that integrate into the existing grid. The graph on the left here shows this comparison, with the yellow bars being the total costs of solar PV compared with the operating costs of coal in black per megawatt hour.
I'm Yilu. Before I talk about the land use for solar construction, I'd like to explain the land use management classification in Australia. This classification is divided into 6 classes. Like the table shows, different classes correspond to different land use proposals. Small-scale solar technology refers to solar panel covering the roof to generate electricity, just like the picture in the upper. The land use for small-scale solar is the roof, so compared with fossil fuels, the fragmented roof area can meet its land needs, and it makes solar construction simple. Otherwise, its land use class is 5, intensive use, which is related to residential, commercial, and industrial buildings. Also, according to statistics, Australia has installed this solar technology on 2.68 million rooftops as 2020. The figure in the lower shows the number of rooftops installed with solar in each state, almost a quarter of the country's rooftops. In terms of large-scale solar farms, surface sunlight and open land area are its basic requirements for land use. Compared with traditional fossil fuels power generation, large-scale solar doesn't pollute the water and the land because it doesn't produce waste residue and greenhouse gases. In addition, fossil fuels need convenient transportation to transport biomass and water resources to participate in a reaction of the raw materials and waste treatment. These conditions are not necessary for large-scale solar farms. The land use classes of large-scale solar are 3, 4, and 5. They are production of agricultural and plantations and intensive uses, but large-scale solar is built on land that contains useless land or land waiting for transformation, rather than good land for planting crops or buildings.
Hi, I'm Yitom. Well, although no carbon dioxide is produced through the power generation process from the solar panels themselves, their manufacturing process does release a certain amount of carbon dioxide because solar panels are made primarily of silicon, and this material requires high levels of heat for proper shaping. The most often cited reports comes from Vattenfall's life cycle studies of electricity in 1999, which shows that solar tends to produce 50 grams of carbon dioxide per kilowatt hour compared to the 975 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour produced from coal. And solar panels are therefore at least 20 times better on the climate. Well, it is worth noting that this study only looked at 3 countries, Japan, Sweden, and Finland, which tend to have lower yearly hours of sunlight. And this study also does not account for recent advances in panel efficiency over the years, so the efficiency of solar is actually probably much higher. And the carbon footprint of solar panel production will also vary widely depending on where they are produced and when, compared to that location's main energy source. For example, the carbon footprint of a solar panel produced in China, where coal is often used, could be almost twice that of a panel produced in Europe. Despite the energy costs of producing panels, most solar cells pay off their carbon debt within 2 to 3 years, and after that, the panels will reduce that footprint even further, with the system remaining carbon neutral throughout the remainder of its lifespan. Considering that solar panels can last for over 25 years, the avoided emissions are significant.
Hi, my name is Arita, and I'll be presenting on the feasibility of solar energy in Australia. So what makes solar energy feasible? Australia receives a rich amount of sunlight spread equally across country, with a mass availability of land for solar panel stations. Panels are designed to suit voltage requirements of businesses and homes at an affordable price, with most companies offering solar rebate. In a fast-paced economy, solar energy has the capacity to meet demand while producing reliable and sustainable electricity without harming the environment. The Australian Bureau of Statistics have elegantly illustrated the steady rise of solar energy since the early 2000s. Logistics and supply chains are two majorly important aspects of solar energy market. The personnel, the supply of materials, manufacture, and transport determine the cost factor, which heavily involves investors and grant funding that allow the system to take place and continue functionality as well as maintenance. Despite the benefits, there are some constraints to consider. Transmission lines play an important role in monitoring and distributing electricity, except it is costly to raise lines in underdeveloped rural areas of Australia. Where energy is not used, it must be stored. However, the existing options are limited to storage capacity and duration. Therefore, the development of reliable batteries is still in progress. Also, providing short-term and long-term milestones in a business plan will attract investors for much-needed funding. Lastly, the one thing climate change and COVID-19 have in common is that it is a planetary scale challenge that has reshaped the way businesses operate due to the disruption in the supply chain under border closures and hygiene controls, affecting existing contracts and policies. Economic and environmental priorities are revisited and policy decisions molded for a more reliable, more resilient. Thank you.
Now, I will make a conclusion. Through the above information, we have a certain understanding of solar energy in these 3 aspects: land use requirement, carbon dioxide emission from solar, and feasibility in Australia. For example, the requirement for land are low, and solar energy is pollution-free. There is no need for abundant water sources, and there is no need for convenient transportation. It has a huge potential and feasibility in the future. However, although sunlight is generally regarded as a rich resource, the reason why solar energy has not been widely used is that the current solar energy technology is inefficient and expensive. In the future, all countries should support independent innovation, strengthen basic research into new battery, improve fiscal and taxation support policy to promote the rapid and healthy development of photovoltaic industry, improve industrial supporting construction and complete the photovoltaic service industrial system. Thank you for watching. there is a reference.